And another day, as I rise up to greet the rain, ooh, and another year since we first heard there would be no sun at all. But how wonderful is the rain. You should find yourself something that's big and bright and orange. Maybe I should paint myself a large square of blue. But how wonderful is the rain. How wonderful is the rain.
In some traditions, people would say, "You just brought me to church." I know this is congregation, and that's all good. Good morning, my name is David Carl Olson. Ooh. Trying something new, and the mask gets in the way. I use he, him pronouns, and I am so grateful to be here with you this morning. I think a lot about the energy that comes into a place like this. And yesterday, your Board of Trustees had a retreat out in the art gallery, and it was a rich, productive, and spiritual time. After that, I went out to the Fall Festival and got a chance to hear Willow sing, and that was just fine. Take a deep breath. Attend to these words of Unitarian minister Barbara Peskin. For the beauty of the earth, this spinning blue-green ball, yes. Gaia, mother of everything, we walk gently across your back to come together again to this place, to remember how we can live, to remember who we are, to create how we will be. Gaia, our home, the lap in which we live. Welcome us. Mr. de los Santos. And Miss Viverito.
Good morning. Today we're going to do our chalice prayers. Sunday, the new life in the chalice of our religious heritage. We do this for our ancestors who taught us through their various religious traditions and by their actions for justice and love. We do this for our children who are learning the traditions we teach and who wings as we understand who we seek to become. Please rise in body or spirit for our words of affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need. This do we affirm and covenant with each other. Please remain standing and put on your mask to sing our song of affirmation.
Sorry about that. I was a little slow on the uptake, as it were. We're going to sing an opening song, is that right? We're going to sing an opening song. Yes, good. So we'll stay standing for that.
Amen.
We're going to stay standing. Oh, my Lord. I know. I'm so sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry at all. We're going to do... Oh, I'm learning this. There we go. We're going to do a responsive reading, and I'm going to ask you to please remain standing. Denise Levertov dedicated her poem, Beginners, to the memory of Karen Silkwood and Elliot Gralla, two persons who died at too young an age. With these words from The Garden of Persephone by the English romantic poet Algernon Charles Swinburne, from too much love of living, hope and desire set free, even the weariest river winds somewhere to the sea. In the Gray Hymnal number 648, the words will be projected for your ease. I will read the Roman type and ask you to join Suzanne in reading the italicized type. And remember, this is a poem. We are not in a rush. Allow the words to speak to you as you speak the words. Suzanne, you want the pulpit and I'll stand to the side? There we go. I will begin. Thank you. But we have only begun to love the earth. We have only begun to imagine the fullness of life.
How could we tire of hope? So much is in bud.
How can desire fail? We have only begun to imagine justice and mercy.
Only begun to envision how it might be to live as siblings with beast and flower, not as oppressors.
Surely our river cannot already be hastening into the sea of non-being.
Surely it cannot drag in the silt all that is innocent.
Not yet. Not yet. There is too much broken that must be mended.
Too much hurt we have done to each other that cannot yet be forgiven.
We have only begun to know the power that is in us if we join our solitudes in the communion of struggle.
So much is unfolding that must complete its gesture. So much is in the bud.
Please be seated.
My feet may take a little while to walk the way of my dreaming heart. The more I walk, the more I breathe. The more I breathe, the less I know. There is a song that I was taught of hills and streams and all the hope
Each month, we make donations to organizations which help us to live our Unitarian Universalist principles in the world. This month, we will make donations to 2 causes where there is an immediate need. The Unitarian Universalist Association Disaster Relief Fund will support our UU congregations, their members, and the communities suffering in the wake of the natural disaster of Hurricane Ian. UUCSR has a close connection with our friends in Florida, and this collection will help them to recover. Also, to Make the Road New York. Make the Road New York is a UUCSR VEACH program grantee. They will use funds to distribute prepaid phones, Metro cards, and financial assistance to asylum seekers sent to New York from Texas. Make the Road is committed to making sure that migrants receive a welcome in New York. Make your contributions on our website or through PayPal or by text message. And if you are on site, the donations box is in the lobby outside of the worship room. Please give from your hearts what you can.
Let us take a moment now to take a deep breath as we prepare for our pastoral meditation. Blessed are you, Spirit of the Forge, for liquefying, uniting, and fortifying this community in the fires of covenant. Blessed are you, Sacred Drop, for holding your divinity as you merge with the oneness of the ocean. Blessed are you, Breath of Life, for expanding us and filling us with this gift every day. Blessed are you, Fruit of the Vine, for filling us with sweetness, reminding us that there is goodness in the world, there is goodness in us. Blessed are you, Trees of Autumn, reminding us that it's okay to lose your leaves as seasons change. It is known that all of nature is resurrection. Blessed are you, Living Earth. May we be reminded to protect you and reflect with each other all the ways to keep you whole. Blessed are you, preservers of peace, repairers of the breach, for knowing who benefits from war, and for knowing who truly suffers from this violence. And blessed are you, agent of liberation, broker of power. May your mind know peace. May your heart know love. May you find the strength to move forward. And when your well runs dry, may it be filled once again with courage and hope. Amen, and blessed be.
Respondo al llamar con decisión. Elijo aquí mis días vivir un hombre fiel. Y hasta el fin mi todo doy. Y por la gracia del amor respondo al llamar. Decisively I answer the call and choose here to live my days as a faithful man. Until the end I give my all, and by the grace of love I answer the call. In my 8th grade biology class at Riverside Junior High School, Mr. Minakuchi taught us about the Gingko tree. Gingko biloba, he told us, was added to the taxonomic tables not from living specimens, but from the fossil record. It was a speculative designation, he said, and European scientists were excited to find living in China that which they had only known from fossils in rocks as old as dinosaurs. The Gingko tree, for me, was the oldest living thing that is. We learned that the tree is used for medicinal purposes. We also learned that once the Gingko biloba was propagated in Europe and the United States, it was discovered that the tree could withstand the harsh conditions of urban life. It could withstand modern air pollution. It could grow along roadways and could handle both the heavy pollution that came from modern trucks and cars, but it was less damaged by traffic driving over its roots. Mr. Minakuchi shared his wonder at the Gingko tree, and my class was proud to plant a Gingko tree in front of the junior high in his honor. It started something. I plant ginkgo trees. I planted 2 in the yard of my childhood home. The ginkgo tree in my mother's yard over to the side has grown to be so beautiful, tall and full and with a perfect pyramidal habit. It might not have been so. When I planted it, the tree had 2 competing leads. Now, I wanted to make sure that the tree was going to live, so I planted it and cared for it and just fretted. What am I going to do? My mother was a lot smarter. She just came out with the pruning shears and cut off the secondary lead. Now, it meant that the thing was kind of funny-shaped for a few years, but of course, as it grew, that little slat scar disappeared, and it became this beautiful, beautiful tree, and really quite perfect. I guess you can't be quite perfect, it's just perfect, but quite perfect. In front of the house, closest to the intersection of Sherman Street and Earl Avenue, the tree that I planted in a few years reached maturity and revealed itself to be a female of the species. Now, this meant that each year it would bear berries, yellow fruit with a very pungent aroma. Some people don't care for that. One morning, my mom was awakened with the sound of rapping at the door by a tiny woman, just about 4 foot 11 and a half inches, which was what my mother's height is, by the way. The woman spoke very little English, but she stood there with a rake and a basket. She pointed to the tree. She pointed to the fruit that was falling down to the ground. She pointed to her rake. It was clear what she was looking for. My mother, speaking no Mandarin, no Cantonese, no Chinese of any kind, found a way to communicate that the fruit was there for her new acquaintance to harvest. The visitor knocked the tree a little just to see if any more would fall off, and she raked up all the fruit and put it in a basket and took it away. And later on that day, there was a phenomenon that has been repeated every harvest time. On the doorstep was a bag in which were boxes of Chinese food. Chinese food from the restaurant that this woman's family ran. Now, I don't believe there was any ginkgo biloba in the food. It looked pretty American happy. But to my mom, it included a lot of friendship, and it was delicious. When I moved to Flint, Michigan, I planted a tree to think of home, of course, and to bless that first home that I would ever purchase. I brought my sense of beauty and hope close to the road where another tree had long ago died and been removed. By the way, I still go back time to time on Google Earth to see how my ginkgo tree is doing. That's not me, right? Okay. I now own a home in an intentionally leafy neighborhood in Baltimore. It's called Original Northwood. There were 2 dying maple trees in front of my house when I bought it. The city removed them, but the city arborist is years behind in replacing trees that they are removing. So I decided to take the matter into my own hands. I planted 2 disease-resistant elms to kind of go along with the neighborhood. But there's more space, and so I found a pretty large ginkgo in the back lot at a very nice nursery not far from my house. I planted it. I cared for that ginkgo, especially in its first 3 years, admiring its fan-shaped leaves. I love that beautiful yellow that they become in the fall, and I await the day when all at once they fall to the earth and they cover the flowers my Mexican companion has planted, cempasúchil, the flower of 400 lives, the flower that's used on the Day of the Dead, that flower that we call marigolds. I began a spiritual practice of rising early each morning, opening the front door of the house, rain, snow, July, humidity, opening the door and just looking at the tree. I let in a little air. I try to let in a little fresh chi, little energy into the place. And I step out and go to the Gingko tree, and I admire it, and I pay attention to the way it's growing. And from time to time, I talk to that tree, and I tell it that I care. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I was invited to work with pastors and rabbis and spiritual teachers from across the country, writing a document crafting a theological basis for an open and humane immigration policy in the United States. This document meant to replace one created decades earlier by the Gamaliel Organizing Network, and that document had been rooted clearly in the Abrahamic tradition. It was Jewish, it was Protestant and Catholic Christian, it was Muslim. As we examined that document and tried to think about how it ought to speak today, both about who our country is and who the immigrants are that are coming to our country, I was asked, as a Unitarian Universalist, to help us place it in a broader, more diverse theological context. It became my task to interview Sikh leaders and Hindu leaders and Buddhist leaders and to help in the drafting of a new text. One of the greatest joys for me was talking to Anakwet, an elder of the Menominee Nation in what is now called Wisconsin. Migration is the story of all life, he said. The salmon migrate from sea to river to stream to spawning pond and then back. The birds migrate north and south according to the weather, and their migration helps us to pay attention to the seasons in which we live. As the earth is warming, even the trees are migrating, as some need to come north into what the moderns call Canada, as the weather in Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota becomes too warm for them. We need to pay attention to the trees. Well, that was in a group meeting. I appreciated it. But in a one-to-one relational meeting that we later held, I was proud of myself. Oh, how white I was. I was proud of myself to tell him that I pay attention to at least one tree. I told him about opening the door of my house and speaking to my Gingko tree. Without skipping a beat, he kind of interrupted and asked me, "So, what is the tree saying to you?" I was embarrassed, ashamed, flabbergasted. I had never thought of waiting for a response from this tree that I spoke to every morning. I never wondered what that tree thought about me. I never listened. I never listened. I thanked the elder for his challenge and promised that I'd pay better attention. I'd find a way to listen more closely to my Gingko tree. When I lived in the Midwest, I was confused for a while. I saw Fort Blunt, Fort Branch, Fort Clark, Fort Davis, Fort Dumont, Fort Harrison, Fort Knox, Fort Rittner, Fort Sackville, Fort St. Vincent, Fort Wabash, Fort Wayne, and that was just Indiana. Now, I'm an East Coast guy, and when I think of forts, I think of forts on ports. Fort Warren in Boston Harbor, Fort Independence on Castle Island, South Boston, Fort McHenry in Baltimore, all built to defend against the British. I know Fort Sumter, where the Civil War broke out, but what were all these forts doing in the Midwest? I am a slow learner sometimes. I am slow. I've known the story of the heroic settlers who populated our nation. Some of them were Swedish, tilling a virgin prairie and depending on hard labor and good luck and a little cooperation with the elements, creating the country that would feed the world with what is the most actually inexpensive food in the world. But how inexpensive was the process of populating that prairie? How inexpensive was it to place immigrant settlers in the Midwest? It came at a great cost. A great cost because the lands of the settlers were not empty. They were living ecosystems of animals and plants and human beings organized into nations. The story of the Western expansion of the United States is the story of war upon war, battle upon battle, requiring fort upon fort upon fort to be able to depopulate and repopulate this vast expanse. In marking Indigenous Peoples Day, as we do this weekend, I asked our music director to allow us to sing the hymn Lakiparl, also known as the Dakota or Lakota hymn, depending on the source. The editors of our hymnal took that hymn and set it to quite beautiful words that we all sang together that come from a different Indigenous people. We sang that to open our service this morning, but I asked for the first verse, at least, of the original setting, because I want to say a word about that and about its historic use. Now, this is a hymn that salutes the Creator who built earth and sky, who fills the ocean, and who initiates and encourages growth, life. The song entered into holy lore for the Dakota people when it was sung on December 26th, 1862. The Christians in the fort in Mankato, Minnesota, did not want to defile their Christmas holiday, and so they waited a day before conducting the largest mass execution in history of the United States. They led 38 Dakota prisoners of war to the gallows. Those men, themselves professing the Christian faith that they had learned in missionary schools, still resisted the theft of their land and the displacement of their people, stood up against a series of broken promises. Now, it is said that as they marched to the gallows, one of the elders encouraged the younger men to sing this song as they walked to the gallows. Beyond the heavens is your great abode. All goodness is secure in your hands. This defiance, even in spite of the inevitable end for that group of men at that time, is a mark of the courage shown by a people who would be a people, shown by many indigenous people in many times and many places. I hear courage, too, in the motto of the United American Indians of New England, who insist we are not vanishing. We are not conquered. We are as strong as ever. On the fourth Thursday of November, I often stand in silent witness with hundreds of those who would witness the gathering of thousands of Native American people in Plymouth, Massachusetts, to proclaim a national day of mourning for the continued meaning of the European invasion of this continent, for the doctrine of discovery, for the notion of manifest destiny, for the false assertion that indigenous people are no longer here. It takes courage to live a life that contradicts mythology. It takes courage to know and tell that alternative story, to educate your children in the ways of your people. It takes courage to listen well to each other, and maybe even to the trees. It takes courage to regard all of life fully with justice, equity, and compassion. It takes courage even to face harsh truths with kindness for self, with kindness for others. My feet are slower than my heart, we heard the song say. Slower than my dreams, slower than my will. I'll walk 1,000,000 miles, but my feet may take a little while. But we have only begun to love the earth. We have only begun to know the power that is in us if we would join our solitude in the communion of struggle. Courage, friends, courage. The struggle is long. We do not travel alone. Listen to each other, friends. Listen to the earth. Listen to the Gingko trees. May it ever be. Peace, salam, shalom, ashe, ashe. I love you. Ho. Amen. There's a boldness that we carry when we extinguish this flame. It's just a little flame. It's just a candle. But it means so much to us. And we extinguish it boldly because there is a fire that is in each of us. There is a fire that is in everything right here that will not be extinguished. And so, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, nor the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Take a breath. You might turn to somebody and say, I made it to congregation this morning, and it were good. We'll sing together the sweet fields of autumn.